Oh, that was earlier than expected. Hey everyone, this is another episode of the Absolutely podcast. Today we have our esteemed product designer from Vermilion Sky, Kim Alban. Say hi, Kim.
Hello.
And today we're going to do a quick chat about product development, the initial stages of developing and managing your idea, and going from idea to something that you could actually share with other people. So, not necessarily prototype, but something that you could have that's concrete and that you're able to share with other people. All right. So, Kim, you've been working in product development, product design and development for many years now. And what are some of the initial hey, I got a cool app idea. And I know that I get it a lot. I know that you get it a lot, but what are some of the first initial steps from I have an app idea to getting something actually done with it?
I guess the most important thing is hunting down the right people that can carry your project out the way you see fit and the way your audience sees fit. In the most time, it depends on your constraints, of course, but having your product in the right hands that can successfully bring it to fruition
Mhm.
uh, under the right terms and guidelines that you set. So when you do have those right people or that right team, the first stages are all about, well, what's the app that you have in mind? What's the idea? Let's get it all out. Let's juice the stakeholder for their ideas and thoughts out and who they think their potential audience might be.
Mhm.
That's why those stakeholder interviews are so important. In those stakeholder interviews, I will usually talk to the stakeholder and assess what are the requirements, who are the competitors, who they might be, what the possible constraints are, and getting all that really, really good information from there helps
Mhm.
me take it to the next step, which is assessing all the competition, making a really ugly spreadsheet of all of these features and seeing where the opportunities lie, where the weaknesses lie, and what is actually going on the market, what's going on at that time to see if, is this a good time? Is this a good fit? If it isn't, let's see what we can do and make it competitive from there. It's timely, but from there, from that first like research phases, from stakeholder interview to competitive analysis to finally catching the audience to do user interviews,
Mhm.
really puts the designer and the rest of the team and the stakeholder in the shoes of, okay, so this is what we need to have, this is what we need to be doing, and every step is very important because product designers have business goals in mind and they have the audience in mind.
Mhm.
And we try and make the best product that makes everyone happy, and really makes what the user wanted to come to the app to do
Mhm.
successful. And we try to do that with as much research as possible.
I see. So you did mention something about your audience. Now, how do you find your audience? How do you know, this is my audience? And usually, when we talk to people who have a potential app idea, they kind of have an audience in mind, but usually it's a little bit more in depth. Could you touch more upon that?
Yeah, finding the right audience really, it depends on the goals that the stakeholder has in mind. So I guess one of the best examples I've come across is, what if Twitter was made for senior citizens? What might that look like?
Hmm.
It might look completely different.
Oh yeah,
There,
the buttons are going to be much bigger.
right, right. From the button sizes to the color scheme, uh,
Mhm.
to the size of the text. It might be a whole different experience because that group of people might find things easier to do a certain way. But that's why talking to that group of people is so important, because
Mhm.
I am not them. So oftentimes the goals for the stakeholder, and they often hold a lot of the really the gold nuggets of
Mhm.
what that might be like.
Mhm.
Um, And when you go off and research as a product designer and you look at the market and stuff like that, you start to gauge and you start to be able to better assess, well, the stakeholder wants X, Y, and Z. What might that look like? You make a few assumptions,
Hmm.
but the research helps you like just come full circle to be like, okay, this is validated by what the market is saying,
Hmm.
and it helps you pick out an audience. Oftentimes, the stakeholders do know their audience,
Hmm.
um, but with the research and the stakeholders' initial interview and their answers, you get a better picture of what their audience might actually be like.
Okay.
Um, and some of your answers come from the research and further on as well.
I see. I like the I'm not them, because it's true when you're um essentially when you're doing, like, when you're looking for the audience and when you're trying to figure out, like, hey, what do these people do, like, you don't know that. And essentially what ends up happening is we spend a lot of time, like, interviewing the people who might be using the app. We spend a lot of time, like, hey, what's your day like what how are your, what are your biggest problems, and how do your problems, and again, we don't want to ask leading questions, and I think that in itself, like, being able to interview somebody and not take them down like a long path of, like, and that's why you want to use our app. You never want the end of the conversation to be like, oh yeah, we definitely need your app. You kind of want that to be organic. And so yeah, that those initial, like, hey, these are my problems, and this is currently how I solve the problem, and here's, I was thinking about solving this issue another way. And yeah, it's actually getting all those nuggets and then bring them back. I think that's a solid way to find your audience. Are there any tools that you use to do audience search?
Yeah, actually, so I believe it's funny. It might be a little long, but I love SimilarWeb, and I keep,
Oh.
SimilarWeb is fantastic. It shows you how many visits your competitors visitors have, just like what's the bounce rate like, down to if their audience comes from like an organic sense
Hmm.
or if it's coming from ads. Also, even it lets you know just like the SEO patterns of your competitors and what keywords are per competitor. So it's really insightful. And what groups um, are really looking those things up. So it does a lot of that hard work for you, the heavy lifting.
Hmm.
But you know what, these tools help us so much more,
Yeah.
um, and help us really just focus in on what needs to be focused in on at what point in time. And
Oh,
that's why I usually like that tool in the very beginning, because it
okay.
also pumps out a nice like 6-page PDF with all this information telling you all the insights. I swear I'm not sponsored by them. I wish I was. But
I
all,
mean, you never know if you guys are listening.
yeah, all of the great information about your competitors. You could put 6 of them in a row and just, let it run its course.
Mhm.
And it lets you know all of the information that you need to know.
You did mention. I mean, that's actually great. I remember when you showed that to me the first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I never even thought about that. But you did speak about organic traffic. The interesting thing about paid or advertising traffic is that most of the time, so if you advertise on Facebook, right, if your competitor is advertising on Facebook, you could actually look at all of the ads that they've used and see the audiences that they're targeting, and you could actually piggyback off of that and figure out, like, okay, well, you know Lyft is targeting this audience. Does this audience really make sense for our brand? If it does, we
Right.
should also be targeting that audience as well. Um, and back, kind of taking a step back to audience, one of the nice nuggets is you always want to be able to sell, like, if you're in the audience searching phase, when you do find people who might be good candidates to use your new product idea, you always want to, yes, you do want to interview them, but you always want to, like, kind of sell it to them and see if they're like really, really into it. Because if you don't, like, we're generally speaking, we're all nice people. If you're like, hey, I have this cool app idea, would you use it? Everybody's gonna say, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna use it. But they might not use it.
Right.
They'll just say like, they might download it once, it stays on the phone for like a day or so, and then eventually, they're just like, ooh, I'm running out of space. Let me delete this app.
Right.
So it's finding your audience. It's really important that you actually get like buy-in, even if you're asking them to pay like $1 for lifetime usage. Don't do that, especially if you get especially if you get a high ticket item, because then you have a whole bunch of people. Like when the price gets to like $14,000 a month, you have a whole bunch of people who are just like, yeah, we only pay like $50 because lifetime.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
after you find the audience and you've done the stakeholder interviews, what are the next steps?
So after finding the audience, and a lot of the times, stakeholders may know who their audience is. They may not. They may give you like a really big range. So when you're doing the competitive analysis, you find all different types of audiences depending on what the initial answer was. But you do that. You compare all the features that everything might have, and you sort of find through all of that research where and what audience, as you mentioned, will fit best. And then you corral your audience. You go out and research, you do one-on-one. Yeah. Around, have one-on-one conversations with them. And this is the qualitative part that is super important. You want to be able to ask them non-leading questions.
Yep.
And see how they solve problems in their own setting. And this observatory kind of research is crucial because, as mentioned before, we are not the users. I will be put on financial apps. I don't know what financiers do or, how they live their life and what's important to them. So let's say I have an interview with someone that's in finance. I would like to know what they're currently using to solve their current problems, how it fits in their day-to-day, and, along with what their normal day may look like, and along with a lot of other questions to see what problems they have, how are they solving it, where our product could fit within there, and also the type of person that they are, so we get a better sense of our bigger picture or persona after all of these interviews, these one-on-one interviews, to paint a better picture for us product designers to then make an app for. So these one-on-one interviews get our answers of what people are doing, why they're doing it, how they're solving their problems, and where we could solve their problems better, potentially.
So outside of this, it sounds like, well, we have now the persona. So we've interviewed the audience. Now we have a persona. So we kind of know like what the audience, like who the person is and how their problems are solved. So I guess with the persona, we also have like the pains, the gains, and their values. And from there, we're pretty much building a value proposition based off of this persona. So the persona, they have their psychological profile, and we know what they want and who they are. And then from there, now we have a solid value proposition. And from the value proposition, the designers can kind of go in and design.
Yes. Usually build a few of them. I usually build a few personas because you can't just build one, because having one use case or one persona, it's like building only for one person, and there will be many types of people. So a 30-year-old person that is a male or something like that who is in finance will solve those problems vastly different than someone that is a stay-at-home caretaker. And that is why talking to them is crucial, so you can see how are they doing what and why are they doing it like that.
That is true. So where does the branding now come in? Because now we have, like, we know, okay, this is we know who they are, we know what their problems are, we know how they want to solve it, and from the person who's developing the app, they have a hypothesis as to how to solve this persona's problems and make their lives easier and better. So where does the branding portion come in this whole mix? Because there's a lot.
Yeah. So after we have the persona and after we've done the comparative analysis and we've really nailed with the stakeholder what the app for sure needs, and after they have a good look at all of this, it helps paint a better picture of, are we going the right way? Is the next step definitely clear for us to move on to? And after we have the persona, we start wireframing, just like
Yep.
these plain old boxes, because it's easier to work from on a really simple interface that you could just build, and have these user flows in and create the user flow from. So when you have this in mind, when you have the persona in mind, you start kind of just building for them and for that use case, and solving the problems that they need help with there, and making sure that the app works. That's where the user experience really comes out, because when we have the persona, we are solving the right problems for the right audience. And so when we have the wireframes and we get stakeholder buy-in, they're happy with the general flow and stuff like that. They're happy with the features that they've already solidified in the first, the step previously. Then we can move on to design, and we start building a bigger profile of, well, this audience, this would be the visual-ish. We may have a few variations of what color scheme to go with, what look and vibe this may be. That is the step where we would initially take on branding and the voice and the look. Because it's harder to undo all of those steps when we put the colors in the first step of wireframing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, definitely when brand changes are more costly than structural changes, especially when we're doing just wireframes and prototyping. And recently worked on a product, and the branding kind of came in a little bit late, and it was cool, but it was more like, ugh, all of these screens have to change, and yeah, it's up in the air. But yeah, so branding, so wireframing and prototyping, testing the wireframes and prototypes with the users. When, from your perspective, when is the best time, in this, initial beginning process? Because, this is not, okay, I'm looking for funding tomorrow. This is more like, okay, I want to see if this is going to get traction. When is the best time to actually show your product idea to, somebody?
That could even happen perhaps within just having a good picture in mind of who the audience might be. You can even set up a survey. Is this something that potentially could be interesting to you or something like that? I always get surveys from Adobe of possible features that they want to implement, but they want to, do some market research first and see if it fits with the right audience. And if they get enough of, I guess, quantitative measurement there of, yes, this group of audience finds this feature interesting, let's go ahead and take it to the next step and go beta version it, test it out, see if they really like it, and then we'll keep it. So some could say that we could send the initial survey out in the beginning, or you could, sometimes also though, in doing the competitive analysis, you'll find that it's already an oversaturated market. So it might not be worth it.
It's true.
So
Yeah.
we might stop right there, or consider another option.
Yeah. Usually when, so pro tip, usually when your market is oversaturated, it's not necessarily like, even if you built the most amazing product ever created, now the issue isn't building the product. The issue is now getting that product in front of the right people and convincing them to switch from
I think I lost you. Your mic. I heard that. Yes, I can hear you.
All right, great, sweet. Technical difficulties. Um, what was I saying?
Convincing that current
Oh
audience
yes,
to switch over.
when you have like a super awesome product and the market is saturated, it's not. You have to convince the people who are using the current thing to switch. Like if you have 100, like let's say if I bought Adobe Suite, right? Everybody in the organization is using Adobe, all the max version of it. Everybody has Dreamweaver, Photoshop, Illustrator. We bought 100 units. Usually, there's a salesperson involved in that. They helped us. They put out like a specific business plan for us. That switching cost is very high, and so it's not necessarily like, oh well, the market's saturated. It's like, okay, could we create a feature or a system that would convince people, let people know, like, hey, switching to us is better. It's good, it's solid. You'll save X amount of money per year, and there needs to be other benefits. So that's
Right.
just pro tip when it comes to like saturated markets. It's possible. You just have to tweak. You have to tweak your approach.
Yeah.
Also, you should be wary of markets that have nothing, because it's probably hasn't been done for a reason.
Right.
What were you
Maybe.
gonna say?
Maybe. Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. Unless you find, if you're going to add a new feature and if the stakeholder agrees with it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're like, well, that's no longer my idea. Then you're, unfortunate situation, then it's not going to happen. Or if you really do your, thorough research and you find that weakness within the market,
Mhm.
add that feature that is still going to be on par with the stakeholders' vision, then you're good to go. But yeah, in terms of empty markets, it maybe it
Yeah.
isn't fruitful, maybe it isn't fruitful, or maybe it's something that is so unique that you may have a really, really great place for, like Honey, which was an app. This is a plugin.
Oh, yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Completely
That's,
genius, got acquired by Google or something like that.
yeah. Because it solved a specific issue. I mean, the behavior was there already. It was okay, great. I found this thing. Now let me see if I can find like a coupon or
Right.
a referral code or something. Right, that behavior was there. Honey just said, okay, the behavior is there. We're gonna build an app that shaves a little bit of time off of that situation, and they're gonna have a better user experience too. Uh,
Yes.
that
Ingenious.
plus their like podcast strategy of, hey, use Honey, get ken.com/honey to get the that's the promo code. Like it worked, and honestly that's how they became super successful.
That was exactly because they went in and did their research. Maybe the initial assumption was people want a better deal.
Yeah,
Who doesn't want a better
all the
deal?
time.
How are people doing this? So I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll have 20 tabs open. And that is, if they did their research and stuff like that, I'm sure they would have come across many people that do that,
Hmm.
period. And maybe for the tech savvy, they would find that person that was like, screw 20 tabs. They're probably onto me and what I'm researching. I'm going to go incognito mode and research
Yeah,
it from there, or use DuckDuckGo and
that's true.
find everything that's listed. So that's why it's really interesting to find every solution that people are doing to solve this current problem.
Hmm.
And they came up with the plugin that's right there, just sitting on your browser bar.
Oh yeah, you hear that, Honey? Sponsor us.
Yeah.
Anyway, to wrap, I mean, this is all excellent, very important information, especially if you're like in the beginning, if you're thinking about building an app, you don't necessarily need to go. This is a great, initial overview of how to do this. Kim, are there any really cool tools that you know about that'll definitely help you with, this beginning phase?
Okay, so it's interesting because I feel like we mostly talked about the beginning phases. That might have been my fault, but
Well, that's fine.
yeah, Hotjar is also amazing for redesigns.
Gotcha.
So when it comes to redesigns, you want to benchmark or be able to benchmark what their current existing product is versus the redesign that you have in mind or will accomplish in the future. Hotjar is an analytics tool that it will give you heat maps of how far people are scrolling, where they're clicking. And because of tools like that, I've been able to observe how people are reading. So now we have studies that tell us the reading pattern that people usually take on is they skim, but they'll go either like in a Z pattern or an F pattern. So these are really important to see what your current users are doing, what your current humans are doing on your current website or app. And it's really powerful. You can also set up surveys on there so you can get a nice NPS score from from your visitors if they fill it out. It's really powerful. So we have some powerful tools on the market. I can go on. But I would say that that is a unique purpose for someone that has a product already on the interwebs. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, you heard it here, everyone. Thank you so much, Kim, for your time.
And thank you.
Oh, well, of course. And we'll be back next week, Friday at 1 p.m. for the next version of the App-Solutely podcast. Stay safe and stay cool.
Have a great one.
You too. Take care.